So there's good parallel.
Would the following, though, be something of a difference? In my own language, I'm of course using my own language. I can't use any other one. And I can think to myself, well, I wonder whether the number 1 is such and such a set, or whether it is such and such a different set. Which of these identity statements should I believe? And it seems to me to be a genuine question. But if I contrast that with the question, I wonder whether my word, or my linguistic expression, the number 1, really does refer to the number 1. That doesn't seem in the same way as if it could be a genuine question for me. It seems a trivial matter of what the word refers to means that my expression, the number 1, does for me pick out the number 1.
Well, but then it raises the question, and it refers to the number 1 in what sense of number 1? In the case of abstract objects like the number 1, it seems to me that ontological relativity doesn't even, I think it doesn't even need to seem counterintuitive. Frege, I seem to remember, raised the question or mentioned the question or the possibility. What is the number 1? It could be Julius Caesar. Doesn't matter. He came that he went at least that far into ontological relativity, and then Ramsey with his what have come since his day to be called Ramsey sentences rather brings out that point again for abstract objects, it seems fairly intuitive that even that abstract objects are brought in there just as stopping points or to bring things together. It wouldn't matter. Well, of course, we know it doesn't matter how we go on and artificially define these numbers, as long as we get the behavior out of them, the properties that make them useful in application, and formally those properties are just the properties of a progression, a sequence, the kind called a progression. But there's an example that I've used. Two physicists who time out. Did I do this before? I know I mentioned it, but I'm not sure I did it, about the neutrino and the physicists.
No, you didn't.
Good.
You didn't.
Okay. Well, this yes, this is, I think brings out some of the spirit of it. There's a crisis in physics, and something has to be done in revising the theory or supplementing it. One physicist suggests maybe we need a new particle. In fact, two physicists arrive at that idea of introducing a new particle that with certain properties that will help clear up the paradox. But one of them brings in a particle that has some rest mass, and the other one brings in a particle that has no rest mass. But they both apply the same word, neutrino, and it seems to me it presents no problem to say that there's clearly no meaning to the question whether A, they are talking about the same particle but disagree in its properties, or B, they're talking about different particles. One has a rest mass, the other hasn't, but they happen to have given it the same name. No difference. And well, no, I think that applies again to the example of the numbers. Yes, the numbers, and again, and to the example of the ordered pairs. That one has certain services that the case of the ordered pair is I think particularly conspicuous this way, because ordered pair isn't even a common sense notion to the extent that 1, 2, 3 are, and it's all that's wanted is something that is going to carry the individuality of both x and y, and not vice versa, and some further entity then in addition to the x and the y. Anything will do, and then they cast about and find, yeah, here's something it'll do. There's a little class of 2 members that's easy to describe. It's not just the class of the members x and y, but a little more complicated. Someone else comes up with an equally simple one, but a different one, and that's a situation where it doesn't matter. You have this function in the sense of service, not in the mathematical sense, to be performed, and anything will do in the pinch. And then the sweeping theory, finally, of ontological relativity is that that's the way with all reference. But what makes it, I say, counterintuitive to all of us is when it's not a question of abstract objects anymore, like ordered pairs and numbers, but sensible objects. And so this is where one has to consider and keep in mind that the sensory associations are undisturbed in all this reshuffling of objects in the course of ontological relativity, one-to-one reinterpretations. The sensory connotations remain, and when a body ends up being identified or supplanted, as you prefer, either way, by a class of quadruples of numbers, the sensory qualities of that body, the qualities by which you learned it through ostension or whatever, carry over to that quadruple, that class of quadruples of numbers, so that it's a matter of shifting one's emphasis from the object to the sentence, ultimately to the observation sentences, insofar as they're objects that we've learned by ostension, objects whose names we've learned by ostension. And those go along unaffected. And what the theory of ontological relativity brings out is just that really the entity, the objecthood is not not really what matters here. The two things that do matter are one, all this bundle of sensory qualities, to put the thing in mentalistic terms, all the association, when it comes to neurally, with the sensory input. That's one of the two things that matter. And the other thing that matters is the role it plays, the service it performs, as a node in the theoretical structure, the logical structure of the scientific theory. And then what the thesis of ontological relativity brings out is these are two separate purposes and can be separated, even be separated ontologically, in that the ontology can be reshuffled at will to within one-to-one for the one, and on the other hand, the sensory input stays put.
In your long career as a teacher and professor, you must have encountered a great number of students who have gone on, some within philosophy and some outside of philosophy, to pursue careers. Does anyone in particular, or do any of them in particular, stand out in your mind as?
Oh, yes, indeed. Of course, of the earlier ones, Donald Davidson. Then in logic, there have been a few, certainly. Well, not so much my students. They've gone successfully into computer theory and the like, but philosophers, later generations, of course, I think of Dogfinn Philistyle and Roger Gibson. Those here I'm mentioning ones that have gone on, carrying on more or less my point of view.
Mhm.